And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. The largest basketball tournament in British Columbia and said to be the largest Indigenous cultural event in Canada, the all-native basketball tournament is hosted by Prince Rupert and attracts up to 4,000 people, which includes athletes, coaches, and spectators. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to the 33rd All-Native Basketball Tournament.
At this year's All-Native Tournament, this is the proverbial calm before the storm. This is where the action is going to take place here at the Civic Center, but the action is really taking place behind these walls.
After 33 years, members of the All-Native Tournament Committee have changed, but the committee's duties continue in the same manner they did back in 1960. After 33 years of organizing a logistical nightmare, Committee Chairman Clarence Martin says the group has it down to a science. And that's not to say the organizational aspect of the week-long event is easy. What's often overlooked by the fans are the number of man-hours involved before the first basket is even made. Combine that with a tight budget, and you have all the makings of a major headache. How do the organizers cope with that pressure? They love the game of basketball.
Well, we've noticed over the past years that, the actual planning begins kind of maybe about a month after the All-Native. And then we really get into making, really going strong with the actual plans itself, sometime in around September, October. Because it takes a lot of working out the logistics and maybe trying to introduce new ideas, but it begins kind of immediately a month after the tournament.
When did you actually get involved with this tournament?
Well, I got involved back in, I guess, around 1978, as more or less just a volunteer, I really enjoy watching basketball and, just to help kind of on an organizational basis. So about 1978 is when I got involved, but as a chairman now, I've been, I guess, about 7 years now.
Is it hard to put a number of man hours that actually goes into one of these organizational events?
Yeah, it is. It's like Russell and I, we start sending out letters or just contacting, the various organizations that the tournament's going to be happening in February, and then, we kind of work from there, working right up to finishing off on Saturday evening.
Not only is Clarence the chairman of the tournament, he's also a jack of all trades.
The busiest time is right from the first 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, because it takes that time just to work out the bugs and making sure everything's ready. And then after Tuesday, Wednesday on, it's kind of, it makes it a little easier for us. But the whole week is busy for, not just myself, but all the committee volunteers that we have, plus the committee members.
Now, how do you go about inviting teams to this tournament? What's the criteria for it?
Well, basically what we do is we look at the last year's. Like this year's, we'll take a look at again, and we have a rule that the first two teams that are out of the that get knocked out of the tournament won't be invited back until the year after. But they have now a second chance of what we call a November qualifying tournament. So they have an excellent chance of getting back in for the year. So we look at how teams are playing in their category.
Before basketball is even played, the All-Native Committee has to be formed. Clarence tells us what is looked for in a committee member.
Well, we looked at people's interest in basketball. We stayed away from members representing certain villages or certain areas. What we looked at is people's commitment to basketball and the organization, so we're very happy with the committee members that we've had over the years, and they're very hard-working people, and that's what we look for.
Does it surprise you year after year to see the type of response that you get not only from Prince Rupert, but from the entire Northwest, and teams coming from as far away as Alberta, Alaska, down the Lower Mainland. Does that ever surprise you?
Well, it surprised me when I got involved, but after, you know, being involved for over the years, it really doesn't. You know, the tournament itself, you know, the players that leave this tournament, you know, are basically our ambassadors. The prime example is what happened to Alberta. You know, they heard about our tournament down in the Lower Mainland, and they wanted to come up really bad. So you know, it's a good. There are goodwill ambassadors. They talk about our tournament all the time.
After 7 years as tournament chairman, Clarence says the event is finally getting the recognition it deserves around the province.
We're very proud of what how the media has come up to give us a lot of exposure. You know, we're very happy because it does our community as well as the organization of the tournament itself. You know, and it's good to see that, you know, to have that backing from the media, and it helps our tournament. You know, who knows? Maybe PSN will come up. It's something that, you know, we're hoping, but you know, we're not really pushing it. You know, we're happy with the local media that we have here anyway.
Committee member Jim Ciccone says it's hard to juggle his day jobs with the tournament, but it's worth every minute of the effort.
Well, it certainly is. I wasn't able to take time off work this year, so I'm trying to juggle work as well as come here. A lot of the tournament members, committee members, take time off work, and they put an awful lot of their own time and their own resources into this tournament. I don't think people realize what they do and the sacrifices they make.
Jim, who is better known around the city as Alderman, says it's hard to measure the financial gains of the tournament.
Well, I've heard a number of figures, but I've never seen a definitive study, so I'm loath to say it provides $100,000 or provides $2 million. It provides a lot of money, and it provides a lot of enthusiasm in the community. Even if the dollars themselves aren't commensurate with what is spent, there's a perception of things happening. Restaurants are full, hotels are full, there's people taking cabs, there's people at the Civic Center. It provides a good feeling in the community about economic activity and social activity.
I asked Jim to look into the crystal ball and predict the tournament's future. He says it's very bright.
I see the tournament's future as very bright, and I think it's going to change very much. The committee is grappling with a number of issues right now. One is the possibility of splitting the senior event into a village and an open category, which I think could have a lot of merit. The village teams have been the heart of this tournament over the years, and they bring the enthusiasm of the village rivalries here. We don't want to lose that. We also don't want to lose the caliber that the open players bring so that the young players can aspire to that. So I see us possibly moving in that direction. I also see the tournament committee moving towards assisting more athletic events in the Northwest, and possibly even looking at scholarships through the high schools to encourage kids to stay in school. We're getting involved in a lot more things that are traditionally just away from tournament organization.
The All-Native Tournament has come a long way since 1960. From 15 teams, the tournament has grown to showcase the best 26 All-Native teams from as far away as Washington State, Alberta, and Alaska. This year, the action was as good as the fans have ever seen. Teams like the Siksika Nations from Alberta thrilled audiences with one of the most exciting finals of all time when they beat last year's senior division champions Musqueam 100-96. Action was equally as good in intermediate play this year, with the emergence of Nanaimo as the team to beat. Nanaimo in the end went on to beat Metlakatla, Alaska 80-73. Thanks to the work of Clarence Martin, Frank Parnell, Russell Gamble, Bernice Pilfold, Bill Angus, Art Sterrett, Leonard Alexei, Peter Haugen, Jim Ciccone, and Farley Stewart, next year's 34th tournament will probably top the excitement that was witnessed this year. How can a prediction like that be made? Just like Clarence Martin said, they have it down to a science.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The Alaska Marine Highway links Prince Rupert, BC with Ketchikan, Alaska. In 2019, a dispute over whether U.S. border guards would be allowed to carry sidearms on Canadian soil led authorities to pause sailings. Let us return to the archives to a 1992 story on how a lease is preventing upgrades to the ferry terminal.
Early morning lineups at the Alaska Ferry Terminal in Prince Rupert. Ferry travel, a romantic notion for some. For others, a necessity, the only way to reach remote communities throughout the North Coast region. Prince Rupert is the only Canadian link in the Alaska Marine Highway system. A system that carries over 400,000 passengers a year from Bellingham up the Inside Passage to Prince Rupert and onto a chain of isolated destinations on the Alaska Panhandle, like Ketchikan, Sitka, Juneau, and Skagway. Last year, 70,000 passengers traveled through Prince Rupert and the BC interior on their way to or from the States. To BC businesses, this service represents about $15 million in tourist revenues. For these people, most of them from Alaska, it's a service they've come to depend on.
About the only way to get to Ketchikan with a vehicle. Unless you come out of Bellingham, lots of times they're full.
It's already hard for us living in Alaska on Prince of Wales and having to rely on the ferry to get off of there or else fly on a little seaplane, which you can't hardly afford anymore either.
We run a fishing resort in Petersburg and we get a lot of customers that come out of here.
But the waits are long and the facility is too small to meet the demands of the heavy traffic.
Yeah, you have to have reservations here long in advance in order to get out, so that tells you there's a lot of people that use it, so I would think that it should be bigger. You know, I would think the people of Prince Rupert would probably like to have this terminal stay here, I would think.
For the past 29 years, the city of Prince Rupert has taken pride in calling itself the gateway to Alaska, and it's because of this ferry terminal. But perhaps not for much longer. Here's the problem. The terminal is old and obsolete. No one recognizes that more than the man who's managed the terminal for the past 23 years.
The main problem is the age of the facility and the fact that the Marine Highway and the traffic has literally outgrown the current buildings, and they're no longer adequate for summer sailings. Both Customs and Immigration have indicated that they're not happy with what they have, and they really have to have a better facility to do their jobs correctly.
Alaska officials want to upgrade the Prince Rupert terminal, but they can't because they don't own the land. They lease it from the federal government, who so far have refused to cooperate on improvements.
But it's 29 years old and it's starting to show its age.
The Alaska Marine Highway people are losing patience, and they want the federal government to transfer the land over to the city of Prince Rupert. They feel the local government would be more cooperative. That's where Prince Rupert's manager of economic development comes in.
It would certainly be advantageous to Canada to turn that land over for a nominal fee to the city of Prince Rupert. I don't believe that the lease payments that are being collected at this point add up to the amount of GST that they would collect from the tourism traffic that comes through the province of British Columbia heading to Alaska.
Pucci has a copy of a letter in which the Alaska Marine Highway system puts Transport Canada on notice that unless the situation improves before December 1st of this year, when the lease expires, they'd be forced to move their traffic through Bellingham instead. The Bellingham facility is a marked contrast to what greets travelers in Prince Rupert. It's brand new, a modern and efficient people mover. If the Alaska officials were to follow through on their threat, the ferries would head north from Bellingham, bypass Prince Rupert and British Columbia altogether, and continue on to the Alaska Panhandle.
They would avoid British Columbia, which would really have a devastating impact on not only the economy of Prince Rupert, but the region and the province as a whole.
This rooming house operator says 50% of her business comes from Alaska ferry passengers.
Well, I think it would be devastating. The fishing industry isn't what it used to be. They threaten our pulp mill to close it down, and we lose the Alaska ferry and tourism. Prince Rupert's going to be in a bad situation.
Alaska Marine Highway is critical to the operation of our hotel. As a matter of fact, 30 years ago, the reason our hotel was built was the inauguration of the Alaska Marine Highway. It's important for two reasons. One, because it's a gateway to Alaska, and secondly, because it's an extension of the Inside Passage that is served by BC Ferries.
The BC Ferry Terminal sits next to the Alaska Terminal in Prince Rupert, a logistical convenience that provincial politicians view as exploitable, not expendable.
It's my view that
the tourism potential on the coast of BC has not been realized. Our vessel, Queen of the North, in the summertime is fully booked. A year in advance, you can't get on it. I think that there's room for tremendous growth. That ties in with the Alaska Marine Highway system, and so some pretty obvious reasons why the province would want to maintain the Prince Rupert terminal.
Recognizing the potential impact on the economy of Prince Rupert and tourism in BC, a tour de force was organized. A delegation representing the city, the Port Corporation, and the province flew north to Alaska. At this point, the federal government will only say it's looking at the problem. Well, that's not good enough for the delegates, so they've chosen to deal directly with the decision makers in the state capital, Juneau. So when a gathering of state senators hosted a neighborly luncheon for the delegation, Prince Rupert's mayor wasted no time in expressing his dissatisfaction with Transport Canada.
We don't believe that our federal government has done the proper job, recognizes the importance both to the country and to the state of that particular facility. So the city of Prince Rupert is going to take over the project. We're going to build a facility for you to be proud of.
Although there's been no agreement with Ottawa, the mayor carried that optimistic promise to the state legislature.
In order to make sure that the ferry system is completely satisfied, is we're going to take over the project from the federal government. We're going to construct a new facility.
I hope you will find the legislature open to your interests on suggestions for terminal or infrastructure improvements.
Despite the goodwill between Alaska and the BC delegation, the threat of a pullout from Prince Rupert is still very real.
I think Prince Rupert needs us, and British Columbia needs us. The big problem is the absentee landlord situation. It's very difficult, impossible to get anything done with the bureaucracy, the Canadian bureaucracy, etc. If we can't come to grips with making improvements there, Prince Rupert is out and Bellingham is in, and I'm not sure that's what we really want, but that is the bottom line, it seems like.
Back in Prince Rupert, the terminal faces an uncertain future. It's now up to the federal government to decide whether to transfer the lease for the land over to the city.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Created in 1976 and abolished in 2003, the Prince George Bulkley Valley Electoral District was created from parts of the Prince George Priest River, Skeena, and Kamloops and Caribou ridings. Let us return to the archives with a visit from then MP Brian Gardner.
Hi, Davina.
Brian Gardner is in his first term as MP for Prince George Bulkley Valley. He's an energetic man with a hectic pace. He likes to visit the reaches of his extensive riding, even though it means a frenzied schedule.
Well, I like what I'm doing. We are, I guess as politicians, lucky in one sense that we can decide what we want to do. There are some who have decided not to do anything. But that's probably the last time there'll be a politician. I think the electorate these days has much higher demands on elected officials, and I think that's the way it should be. So I enjoy doing this kind of work. I enjoy the working locally with different groups, because I think that's why I'm here. I represent these people. I think there's obviously an important role to play in Ottawa as a member of Parliament, in Parliament. I do that too. But where I get the energy from and the excitement is really working with community groups and getting a few ideas at work and seeing them come to fruition.
But one wonders, just how effective is an MP who's not a member of the governing party? Does the system work?
Well, I think it does. For example, I guess I'll use Via Rail as an example. That's been an issue that I think most people know that, in this case, Jim Fulton and myself have been pursuing, and we've, I guess in one way, have learned from the local governments and chambers of commerce how important that is. I think we've also delivered a message about how we need their support, and we have used questions in the House of Commons and have written letters and personal contact with the government, and I think for the first time I'm more optimistic than ever about the Via Rail Skeena service being kept. And I can assure you that with the current government's attitude these days, that if we hadn't done that work, and I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much, but especially if we hadn't gotten out, talked to mayors and councils and chambers, we likely wouldn't have a Via Rail service right now. So I think if you use your time effectively in the riding and then deliver that message in the right way in Ottawa, I think we can benefit the area. We don't win everything, don't get everything, but I think so far we've done not too badly.
Okay, well obviously it would, I think, be a little more beneficial if the Member of Parliament was with the government in power. But in this case I do want to say that I think Brian Gardner is a good MP and he does a lot of work. In the last few years he's been very visible to our communities and he's doing a good job, and I feel confident when we bring things to Brian that in fact he does carry them through. The success I think is reasonably good.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
According to a policy brief in Youth Engagement in Politics in Canada, voting is a habitual activity. A study revealed that after turning 18, those who vote in the first 3 elections are likely to continue so throughout their lives. In this final segment of Open Connection, let us return to the archives with some Houston youth.
During his last visit to Houston, Gardner faced the normal day of a long series of meetings, including a noontime session with high school students. He heard their views and tried to answer their questions about just what it is that he does.
This would be probably a normal day. I met with the mayor this morning to hear what some of his concerns about the post office and the crossing here and other things. I met at the community services, Kelly Johnson, about what she does, then with you, and then this afternoon I have a couple more meetings with people as well, just to, sometimes it's just keeping up to date with what's going on, and then other things are there some problems that people want to mention to me to follow up on. Okay, if I say Quebec, what comes to mind?
They want to separate.
They want to separate,
yeah,
okay.
They just don't want to be a part of us. They want their own ways. So
yeah.
That's how I feel.
I think that Quebec could be like distinct and still be part of Canada.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Would you say you would encourage people to learn another language or learn French?
I think another language is just a great idea, you know, because
it's a necessity now.
Yeah.
If it's for most university courses, you do need a second language 12.
Yeah.
Be it Spanish, French.
Okay.
And I think it's just neat, you know, it's kind of neat. You meet somebody who speaks that language and, you know, you talk with them, then you feel that, wow, I'm glad I learned that French instead of just knowing French for the benefit of getting 43 out of 50 on a test.
Yeah.
And if you know like a whole group of people.
The idea behind meeting with students and young people, I came, I guess, a while back. A lot of confusion in the country these days about where the country's going. I think there's a lot of confusion in a lot of people's minds about what elected people do.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.